Okay, we're back in the studio, back at the table, and we're going to kind of pick up where we left off on that graphic you just saw there. First, let's do introductions. Doug Moore from the Post-Dispatch, reporter covering diversity issues. We appreciate you being here. Honored to have you. Honored to have back at the table Dr. Dara Glick from Washington University. Thanks for coming back. And back in tonight's show, we already know A.J. Bockelman with Promo, and Tracy Turner Bumberry with PFLAG St. Charles, also worked as a counselor as well, I believe. Yes. We did Promo explanation, do PFLAG for folks who may not know.
Sure, parents, friends, family. Now they add allies as well, of lesbians and gays. Also includes transgender population as well.
Okay, let's talk about allies in general. I think we just saw on the screen there the statistical likelihood to abuse drugs, to be more honest about yourself online versus in person. What are you seeing? You know, bullying is a big word these days. How does it relate to what we're talking about tonight?
I think we have to quit normalizing bullying, especially in this context. There are terms that get a lot closer to understanding what it feels like, and one of my favorites is predatory aggression. You have to understand the kind of repeated isolation that someone goes through, that they are repeatedly sought out and then made to feel less than over something that's elemental and unchangeable about them. And when you put it in that kind of context, you can't get away with sort of minimizing the human cost or acting like it's happening to everyone. It really isn't. It's why we need things like PFLAG that create new sense of community when they are being so systematically excluded from other communities.
Say that again, predatory
aggression.
That doesn't sound very after-school special.
Right, right. So it gets to the sense of it, and the people who are experiencing it aren't describing it as, oh, it's just sort of what happens at school, right? It increases their risk of suicide. It's all of those pieces. We have to stop acting like it's normal.
Go ahead.
Well, we were also talking about how there's so many different layers to it as well. I thought the doctor hit on it so well when he was talking about heterosexual language and how important it is for all of us to become educated on this. For example, my daughter is a lesbian. That's one of the reasons why I went to PFLAG. And I can't tell you how often, wherever we are, do you have a boyfriend? I can't wait to hear about your boyfriend. When are you going to get married? You know, the things such as this. So there's so much of a language that goes on that is heterosexual in origin that is more subtle. So the bullying is an absolute huge piece of it, but there's so many other things we have to get educated on as well.
Yeah, growing up, that was the case now too. I remember those were the questions you always dreaded. And it was always like, when are you getting married? Where's your girlfriend? So you would kind of shirk, you would dread going to church, you would go family outings to school oftentimes. Mm-hmm. Because growing up gay or thinking that you're gay, these are the types of questions and so people may not mean it in a bad way, but it is sort of the heterosexual language that people are using that is unintentional bullying sometimes, I think.
And I think one of the major challenges that we're really seeing is that it's not just about bullying based upon the category of LGBT. The major factor is that our schools are not addressing bullying across a broad spectrum. There are great statistics out there that show even the aggressors, the bullies. Mm-hmm. If they have 2 or more incidences of bullying in school, they have a 30% more likelihood to have misdemeanors or potentially a felony by the time they're over 21. That's a pretty staggering statistics. Yeah. So if our schools are not addressing that, that's a major issue. And part of our challenge ends up being that down in Jefferson City, where there could be an effort for a great policy change around this, unfortunately, there's an unwillingness to add sexual orientation or gender identity into a protected class for students. That's called enumerated categories. And we liken that to what we saw in the 1950s and 60s when we realized that discrimination needed to have categories defined in order to say these people are targets of discrimination. We know that there are students who are targeted not just for being just gay or lesbian or gender variant. You're bullied because you're heavy. You're bullied because you're not exactly the toughest boy on the team, for a variety of different factors. In fact, the #1 issue that students report being bullied for is oftentimes actually religion.
A very alarming statistic I have here. More than 1/3 of LGBT youth report that they have attempted suicide. Does that sound accurate to the table?
So. I'm surprised it's not higher, actually. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's growing up gay and as an adult, meeting more and more kids that are struggling in middle school and high school, they see that as the only way out. And that's why gay straight alliance groups that are growing in most schools now, PFLAG, all these sort of support groups that show you're not alone, because that's so important. I think Dr. Haller talked earlier about sort of growing up in isolation, feeling like you're the only one. You're that person who's different. You know, I'm the only gay person on the planet that you're wearing sort of the scarlet letter. And once you realize that you're not alone out there, that there are other people, that it's normal to be gay, normal to be a lesbian, then that goes away. Your confidence level grows. You don't want to drop out of school. You don't want to kill yourself. You don't want to pull away socially, and all these sort of problems that are set forth, right? I mean, I'm sure you see that.
If you think about suicide being the ultimate hopeless stance, that's when there's no way out, you have no other options.
Right.
So that's when it becomes so important that people who have gotten through it, are dedicated to these issues, stand up in every place you possibly can. You said the language is in churches, it's in schools. So if it's everywhere, where do you go for support? And how do we, as responsible community members, stand up in each of our roles, whether it's in our child's school or in covering these issues?
Yeah,
in a
there's basic
responsible way.
responsibility that we all have, I think. No matter what we do.
And one of the major factors that I would add is that in any location around the country, not just Missouri, a student can push for the support of a gay-straight alliance in their school. Mm-hmm. We found that by and large that is a major factor that impacts the mental health and well-being of students within a school district. Mm-hmm. And thanks to the work of the ACLU, they've actually taken these cases to this court mm-hmm. system here in Missouri even. Mm-hmm. And typically these days, if a school is denying a student group from having a gay-straight alliance, all it takes really is a letter from the ACLU, and usually the school backs down. And I think the news is it's getting better.
It is, and it's very wonderful. I live in the St. Charles County area, and quite often when people hear that, there's some stereotypes about St. Charles County as well, that we may not be as progressive. We may not have the programs. You have to cross the bridge to get to the programs. At Francis House School District, all 3 of their high schools have a gay-straight alliance and have had it for quite a few years. We have a PFLAG chapter that's very active and that meets monthly at St. Charles. We also have the Growing American Youth. There's a chapter in St. Charles because they had found that so many of the St. Charles youth were going out to St. Louis. So there really are, I really want kids to understand that support is out there. We are there. You look for us and you will find us. We are there.
And I think you answered the question I was going to ask next, but is that stigma changing? You talk about growing up. Is it different now?
It's improved, I think, no doubt. I mean, there's obviously more room for improvement. I think education in our schools, the anti-bullying and the resistance to actually have that kind of legislation or policy on the books because they don't see it as a real problem still, I think. And I'm not saying all educators are like that, but there certainly are some out there.
There's a strong belief.